Are you thinking about making the move to Richmond, Texas, where in this video I'm going to give you the good, the bad, the ugly of everything it's like to live out there in Richmond, Texas. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, you want to stay tuned to this video. Hi, my name is Aaron. I'm a real estate consultant, and every week I'm helping buyers relocate to and throughout the greater city of Houston and the surrounding suburbs. So if you need to know anything about where to eat, sleep, live, play, hit me up morning, noon, or night. I'm your guy. I'll drop my number on the screen right now. Send me a carrier pigeon, hit me in the comments, hit me with a DM, hit me on any of my social media, whatever way is the easiest way for you to get in touch with me. I would love to be a resource for you. And so I've been here long enough to see Richmond basically transform in the 10 years that I've basically lived here, as well as my aunt has lived in Richmond for nearly going on 30 years now. And I remember when she first built her huge house out in the Richmond area with the pool and the very close to the lake. She basically had almost lake living for when she moved out here for a super affordable price. But I remember when she built out there off of 99, before 99 was out there. And I remember, you know, basically it being super rural, super wooded. Nothing was really out there at that point in time. And to see kind of what it has developed into in such a short period of time has been like really crazy to see. And so to put into perspective, like many of the suburbs that are surrounding the city of Houston, the growth has been crazy in such a short time frame. And Richmond is actually one of my favorite places to be, but we have some caveats as to why, you know, it may not be as high up on my list based on my experiences, but Richmond is a great place for you if you are into certain things and have a certain lifestyle. But the first thing that you got to know about living out in Richmond is that you are about 30 minutes away from downtown Houston. And so that's not too uncommon for what, you know, most suburb life is like. Katie's not too far from downtown Houston. Arcadia is about the same distance from downtown Houston. Cypress is about the same. You know, pretty much anywhere going around this map, you're going to be about the same distance from, you know, that suburb to downtown Houston. That's just kind of how things are set up. Anything that basically is going to touch 6 or is going to touch 99 is going to basically be within the realm of that 30 to 40 miles from downtown Houston. And Richmond is no different from that. And I can tell you one of the reasons why I would be hesitant to live in that area is because when I first, like I just said, my aunt lives out in that area. And when I first moved here, I transferred here from San Antonio to work for a fairly large construction company in Houston. And my aunt was like, yeah, you can come stay with me for a few weeks until you find your apartment and until you get your bearings about what the city and all that stuff is going to be like. And so I basically lived with my aunt out here off of 99. And when I tell you that I just wasn't used to, at that point in time, I wasn't used to having that much road in between where I lived and, you know, where I work. And, you know, she had been doing this for basically 20 to 30 years. So she's used to getting on a tollway and riding for so long, or getting on the interstate and just riding so long to and from work. But for me, that was a huge culture shock to feel like I'm going to have to be in my car for 45 minutes to an hour just to get to where I work. And so although it is not a super far distance, even back then, you know, when I first moved here, it just felt like it was just a super long drive. In my opinion, I love the community. I love how gorgeous it is. I love how it's so tucked away from Houston, so where you can feel like you're having a completely different lifestyle from the grind mode of being in Houston. But that commute to me was a little bit too far for the everyday person that may or may not want to be in the actual city of Houston. And so I say all that to say it's a great location if your lifestyle is going to take you to being on some of these perimeter areas. Like if you work in Sugar Land, or if you're even better, if you're in Rosenberg, if you're in some of Katy. Now, what's interesting about this is Richmond is basically spread all the way up to this toll road. and it has some spots where it goes all the way down here as well. So if you're working and living and playing in Richmond, and you're in this area, or you're in basically from 10 to 6, anywhere in this southwest area, that's going to be, you know, damn near a perfect location for you to be. But the moment you basically, like any of these suburbs, the moment you have to get inside the beltway, if your lifestyle is bringing you inside of 8, it's going to be a lot of traffic. And I was, for the first week, I was just trying to say, would it be better for me to get to 10 to get to downtown? Would it be better for me to take this toll road? I was spending a ton of money on that toll road, and eventually I just settled on taking Streetway on the alternate route down to 90, basically just to get into the city, right? So it ended up being, you know, like I said, I love the location, but that commute to and from Richmond into the city was a little bit too tough for me. But I know some people that do that kind of thing all the time, just because they would prefer to live out in the country a little bit further away from the city of Houston and just make that commute versus living in the city. But that just necessarily wasn't my style of lifestyle. And the first moment that I could get in closer to the city, we took it, right? And so it is a great location if you are going to be in that southwest part of the world. But if you have to get inside of 8, or if you have to make some trips to the airport, like you have to go up to Bush, or if you have to get to that airport on a fairly frequent basis. While I was down there with my aunt, as my wife was transitioning, we had to go to the airport to get to basically pick up my wife and just kind of figure some things out as we were transitioning here. And that drive to the airport was definitely over an hour from where my aunt lived. And so if you need to be at, if you're going to travel a lot and you're going to be at Bush International, I don't know if Richmond is going to be a good spot for you. Now, you have some great infrastructure out there, and that's one of the things that I love about it, is because, like I said, I've been here long enough to see it kind of blossom over these last nearly 10 years. And when my aunt first moved here, it was not nearly as much stuff out there. And out there off of 99, there's just so much infrastructure out there right now. So everything that you're basically going to need to live, you know, little shopping, little boutiques, groceries, anything that you're basically going to need is going to be out there in that area. You know, basically off of 99, you're going to have your grocery stores, you're going to have your, you know, your CVS's, you're going to have your restaurants, you're going to have your parks, you're going to have all the infrastructure of things that you need to basically feel like you don't need to go anywhere, and to basically be at home. And so I don't want you to feel like it's super country. There's some parts of this, like Richmond is also considered to be in some of these parts that are still a little bit more green. And so kind of as you ride around there, you know, these parts may not be as developed as the stuff that's close to 99. But if you go, you know, if you're just riding 99, you'll basically think that this is a big city for what you're going to see. Like I said, you're going to see basically from this whole ride down, you're just going to see so much infrastructure of stores and restaurants and little eateries and places to wash your car and just things that you can do, movie theaters, just stuff that you can do right here off of 99, that the infrastructure for shopping and basic fun is going to be something that you are very comfortable with, where you're not feeling like you're sacrificing by moving so far out. Another thing that you're going to want to know is that there's such a big variety of styles of lifestyle out there. So if you want the huge house that's on the lake, you can get that out there. If you want that big old house that is kind of tucked off, not in a traditional subdivision where you got a lot of land between you and your neighbor, you can get that. You have some people out there building these custom homes on a lot of land that are just super gorgeous little mini mansions out there, right? And you also have a ton of opportunity to get in a planned community where you're tied to a good school. All of the neighbors' houses kind of look the same. It's by the same builder or by a couple builders in the community. So you have such a huge variety of different lifestyles that you can live out there, from super rural, a little bit more simple, all the way down to the traditional suburb kind of vibe that you would feel in some of these other suburbs around you, you know, your Pearlands, your Sugarlands, your Cadies. So if you want that kind of lifestyle, you can definitely get that as well. And just to kind of show you what I mean, we can hop on over to HAR. And so in some of these, like, you can get some multi-million-dollar properties out in the Richmond area. So I don't want you to think there's a bunch of, there are a bunch of cattle pastures and things just kind of as you're out there and about. But as you can see, you can run up some money here pretty fast with some of these houses. Just because of, you can, like I said, you can get the variety of lifestyle. I got a blog coming up here pretty soon for my review of a couple of these communities out here, so stay tuned to that. But there's neighborhoods that have been here for a while. There's some neighborhoods that are brand new, you know, and you have a variety of, this was gonna fall more so in line with what your traditional like planned community is going to be. You're going to see that all of these houses are basically a part of this community, right? So you definitely get a variety of home out here, which is always good when you are looking for a new area, especially if you're not from here. You know, you can definitely pick and choose kind of what your style is and go for that. The next thing to know if you're thinking about moving to the Richmond, Texas area is that it has a very solid school district. Now, you are tied to the Lamar Consolidated ISD. It is a top rated school district here in Texas, but those are not my words. I'm going to leave a link to niche.com underneath this video so you can go and do your own research, but we'll scan over it together just so you can see it. And so this is Lamar ISD, and it's a very diverse school district. I think it has some very solid schools. You know, schools are highly rated. They have good teacher ratings. Students are above average compared to some of the other school districts surrounding the greater city of Houston. You know, if we do over niche.com, you know, it's rated an A, which is not too far behind Katy ISD and Cy-Fair ISD out here in the Texas area. So it's basically going to cover, for the most part, pretty much all of this area. And I think it stretches out a little bit over into some of these little smaller towns. But it is definitely one of the best school districts that we have out here in Texas. So if you have kids that are going to be in that school age where you're going to be in public school for a while, elementary all the way up through high school, they're definitely going to have some great options in the Lamar Consolidated ISD. And so that's definitely something you don't have to worry about paying for a private school. If you're going to be moving out to the Richmond area, your kid is going to have a great education. So if you're thinking about making that move to Richmond, you know, one of the first questions I get asked is, did it flood out there, right? And so everybody's kind of afraid of the boogeyman. Everybody's afraid of Harvey and what things like Harvey can do to an area. And, you know, basically no area was exempt. Harvey was this thing that we had never witnessed before. You know, most times we get hit with hurricanes and things like that, or we get hit with bad rainstorms, and they eventually go to my home state of Louisiana and hang out there a little bit longer. But Harvey was a little bit different in that it came over the greater Houston metroplex and it just stayed there for, you know, like a week, right? And so anywhere that was either borderline on having a high flood rating or kind of close to water, or anything that was just in a flood risk zone, you basically got tested to the max during Harvey. And it was like something we had never seen. Our water sources that hold the hugest, you know, portions of all of our rainwater were basically full into the capacity. And because of that, everything just started to basically flood and back up. And so, like many of these communities that are in, you know, a little bit more areas that are being developed, so, you know, like your Cypress, like your Katie's and Richmond, Rosenberg, a lot of these locations have a lot of water sources and little creeks and ponds and things that kind of run through them. And so one of the first concerns that people have about Richmond is it a high flood risk? And is it something that I should worry about? Did it flood during Harvey? And it's going to be case by case. There are some areas in Richmond that were, you know, not impacted, and there are some areas of Richmond that did flood. You know, one of the benefits of buying new or buying in something that was built 2017 or later is that to basically close on that house, you had to be at a certain elevation. So in the event that something that was as bad as Harvey was to happen again, your home would be safe because it would be built up a little bit higher. But if you're buying something a little bit older, our next line of defense would be to look at those seller disclosures and kind of see whether or not that house did or didn't flood. But to go a little bit more in depth on what it looks like for some locations, is it looks beautiful. For some of these locations of Richmond, some of these are in complete X zones. That's not too dissimilar to how I'm living up here in the city. I'm not very close to any water sources, so there's nothing that I really have to worry about, other than whether or not the water has enough places to kind of drain off to kind of get away from my house, right? So if you're in an area like this, you're in an X zone, you would not be required to have flood insurance. But remember when I showed you that Richmond is basically all of this right now, and a lot of these new communities are kind of hugging around this little flood zone area, and there's a lot of development that has happened around these areas, right? And so flooding is definitely a risk that is going to come with basically moving anywhere around the greater like Houston, Texas metroplex. It's something that you're going to have to kind of deal with, and it's going to be a case-by-case basis, especially if you're buying a home out here. But the first line of defense that we would have for any of these homes would be to check out the flood map. Then we're going to go and check out this thing that we're looking at right now, which is known as the seller disclosure. And this house did not flood. It's not in a flood zone. So this would be one of those houses that we would say, yes, we want to go check it out, right? But case by case basis, you know, there's places that flooded in Harvey that of all the storms, all the flood warnings, all the hurricanes, all the things that have happened that have never flooded before Harvey, and likely may not flood unless something bigger, bad, or worse than Harvey were to ever come back. And so we'll weigh the pros and cons depending on what your budget is and where you're trying to find to see if, you know, it is a real legitimate threat that a Harvey or something like that could come back, and whether or not that house is still a good fit for you with a little bit of homeowners insurance, right? So it's something that we are going to want to check out, but those are our lines of defense for flooding. Unfortunately, there is no area in the greater Houston metroplex that is safe and immune from flooding. It can happen pretty much everywhere. Even in a place like I live, we would probably have street flooding in the event that something like a Harvey happened again. So you can't really let it deter you from making a purchasing decision, because you basically need to live in the clouds if you're going to be moving to the greater Houston area with the amount of rain that we get. And last but not least, one of the things that I love most about Richmond is that if you are, especially if you're in one of those areas that isn't necessarily tied to a brand new community, and you're okay with kind of being on your own or getting some of those older locations, you can find some homes that actually have super low tax rates, under 2%. There's a couple spots that I've seen where the tax rate is like 1.6, 1.7, which is even lower than you can get in some of these homes in the greater Houston market. I know our tax rate is fairly low and we're like 2.2. So to have a high dollar, really nice house in a location that's already established, and to have a tax rate that is under 2%, that is always a positive thing. But it still holds true that if you are going to be buying a brand new construction home in some of these brand new communities that are tied to good schools, tied to great infrastructure, you are going to be paying over 3% for your tax rate. So the suburb rules still apply out here in Richmond. If you're going to be buying brand new, the entry point is basically $400,000 right now. And if you have a tax rate of over 3%, you're basically going to be paying $1,000 a month just for taxes before you get your homestead exemption. If you don't know what the homestead exemption is, that's basically a tax deduction that you get for being your primary residence. So you get a little bit of a tax break on how much that you actually pay in taxes a year. But out the gate, you're going to be somewhere around $1,000 a month. So definitely something to keep in mind. And so back to one of these examples of a newer community that was built within the last couple years, you can see that this tax rate is still hovering around the low threes. When it probably first broke ground, it was probably like mid threes. And now that it is a few years older, it's still low threes. So after your tax exemption, you would still get a little bit of a break, but not too much. And so this is an example of one that is kind of a not in its own, it's not a part of a master plan community. It's part of its own kind of thing where it's a little less deed restricted, it's a little bit more established. They probably built this house way after the fact, but they held that land in that community for a really long time before they built it. And this is the kind of house that you can build out there, but look at this glorious tax rate of under 2%. So that's definitely the style of house that you can get, and that's the variety of tax rate that you can get out in the greater Richmond area. Just because you have so many different styles of lifestyle that you can get with way wide open fields and wide open land to being packed in a community subdivision. Because of that, you're going to get that range of taxes in the Richmond community. So how did I do? Do you think that Richmond could be a great place for you and your family? Do you think that it's somewhere that you would want to live, or did I scare you away? Hopefully I didn't. If it is somewhere that you would love to live, I would love to be a resource to you. I'm going to drop, some reviews of some other Richmond communities that I've done up here. If you want to take a look at those, if you're not quite sold on the Richmond area and you want to check out some other surrounding suburbs, I'll drop those videos over here. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have an amazing day.